Hi everyone, I'm your host Neha and you're tuned into Durian Dreaming, the show that brings you extraordinary stories from seemingly ordinary experiences in Indonesia's fast-paced market. Let's dive into today's conversation with another inspiring guest. On today's episode, we've got someone amazing joining us, Roshni Mahtani, founder and CEO of the theAsianparent and Mama's Choice. She's the powerhouse behind the theAsianparent. It's the go-to platform for parents across Southeast Asia with the reach over 30 million people across 13 countries. And on top of that, she started the Female Founders Network to help women entrepreneurs thrive in this region. Roshni has done it all, from building businesses, supporting startups, and championing diversity. And she's also been recognized by Forbes and plenty of others for her impact. We are diving into what it takes to build a business in Southeast Asia, how she's navigated this vibrant but complex market, and what she's learned along the way. So let's get into it. Hi, Roshni. Welcome to our podcast, Durian Dreaming.
Hi, Neha. I love the name of the podcast, Durian Dreaming, because I find myself consistently durian dreaming.
Thank you so much. We are very excited to have you on a podcast. Roshni, you have built this massive parenting empire in Southeast Asia. But let's rewind for a second. What was the spark that got you into the world of parenting content and products? I mean, was it something very personal, or did you just spot a big gap in the market?
So it all started off with this blonde hair, blue-eyed toddler in New York City who asked me, what's my favorite fruit? Without missing a beat, I proudly declared durian. And her curious expression was priceless. So naturally, I thought, should I introduce her to the king of all fruits? But then my internal Asian mom radar kicked in. And the first question that came up in my head was, is durian even safe for toddlers? And so cue frantic Googling that turned up absolutely nothing. And that moment planted a seed in my head. Why wasn't there accessible information for parenting through an Asian lens? And it turns out both the toddler and my career survived the durian dilemma, and I found myself along the way.
Oh, wow. So when you expanded into Indonesia, what was your first reaction to how parents here approaching parenting? I mean, was it very different from what you've seen in other countries? Or what was different in this market?
So Neha, one of the fun facts is that my dad was born in Indonesia. So I've always felt a connection to the country, though he's not Indonesian. And my bahasa is decent thanks to taking Malay till A levels. So expanding into Indonesia felt like familiarity, but yet it was stepping into a kaleidoscope of different cultures. With 270 million people from different religions, customs, tradition, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to parenting here or pretty much anything. So what really struck me is the family-first spirit that ties everything together for Indonesians. Parenting is less about a solo mission, and it's an entire team effort. Family values are at the heart of everything, and parents here often lean on extended family, especially grandparents, aunties, uncles, etc., for guidance and support. So it really feels like this shared journey in Indonesian households, which is really a beautiful and unique aspect of the culture. In many ways, it felt very familiar to the Indian culture as well. And if I were to look at outside of the family environment and you just look at the ecosystem in itself, malls and restaurants are incredibly family friendly here. So it's perfectly normal to see kids and babies everywhere. Coming from Singapore with just, 30-something thousand babies born a year, it was a bit of a shock, and really a joyful shock at that. And then add to the younger age at which people marry and have kids. So you have a society where togetherness fully defines the parenting journey here.
Okay. But, Indonesia is such a mix of traditions, like, traditional and modern ideas. So when you were launching here, how did you decide what kind of advice or content will make it to your platform, or what kind of content would resonate with the mums here in this market?
That's a great question. So I think one of the most important things is looking at the community itself. And with the Asian Parent, I think one of the things that we've done really well with the application was creating a forum that allowed people to really express themselves. So it wasn't just a one-way broadcast like a typical publisher where we were telling them what to do, but we were really opening up the whole community aspect of it, which allowed each individual country to develop its own identity. So the community has always been an inspiration for me. And from the beginning, I always saw that an untapped audience with an unmet need, in this case, Asian parents who are, hungry for guidance that resonate with their unique cultural context. Indian parents differently from a Chinese parent, parents differently from a Thai parent. And of course, in Indonesia, if you're Javanese, you're going to parent differently than if, let's say, for example, you're from Sumatra or Medan. So I think that just allowing the community to have their own dialogue and to grow. So parents just aren't consuming content. They're actively sharing experiences and needs with each other. And all of this direct feedback has been super invaluable, right? Because it also allowed us to then move beyond content and community and into products.
Okay. So Asia Parenting first started with community building, like you said.
So Asian Parent first started with content. And it was really about, creating relevant, relatable resource to address questions and challenges that all parents face, right? So these would be things like, how many times a night should a newborn baby wake up? Or things like when is the right age to potty train a kid? A lot of these things, while there are a little bit of cultural nuances, but it is really a shared experience that whether you're American or Brazilian or Asian, you're going through the same exact milestones. So initially, a lot of the content was more generic. And we managed to get into, over the years, the community aspect, which allowed the community to create their own content, which has allowed it to take a life of its own.
Okay. So you have now got a blend of content, community, and products.
That's right.
Okay. Did you always plan for them to work together like this, or did it just evolve naturally?
Like I shared, right? Community was always the inspiration. So right from the beginning. And at the end of the day, all of the feedback that we were getting from the community allowed us to then launch products. So it felt natural to create solutions that address the gaps that all of our moms were pointing out. And ultimately, what some of the things that we realized was that there was a need for halal certified mom and baby skincare products. There was also a need for value for money products that families could trust. So, if you really ask me, looking back, the integration of content, community, and product wasn't a pre-planned strategy, but it evolved organically from listening to parents and responding to what they needed most. It's the synergy that allowed us to support families in what I would say is a truly holistic way and at every step of their journey. So, I would say it turns out just like every parenting hack, the best ideas always will come from listening, improvising, and of course, having a little bit of chaos.
Okay. And what is the brand name of the product lineup here?
So in Indonesia, our most popular product line is called Mama's Choice. So that is a skincare line for pregnant women, breastfeeding women, and young children under the age of 2. So we do everything from stretch mark cream to nipple cream to, supplements to increase your breast milk supply to baby toothpaste. So Mama's Choice is our most popular brand in Indonesia. And then we have another brand called Little Ray, which is all about beddings and swaddles and soft premium bamboo material.
Oh, wow. And these products are already existing in other markets like Singapore. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. I really like the name Mama's Choice. I mean, frankly, it's a no-brainer. It's like, that's the name that comes so easily. And once you've heard it, it's going to be on your mind for long. How did you come out with this name?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, Neha. So really the name, I didn't come up with this name, Mama's Choice. The community did. So that's the craziest thing. So when we launched Mama's Choice, we decided that we wanted to be very, very data-driven, and we wanted it to be a community-first product. So we did hundreds of thousands of surveys with our audience across different markets, predominantly Indonesia, because Mama's Choice was launching out of Indonesia first. And we allowed the community to ultimately choose the brand name. So we fed them 100 different brand names, and then we filtered it down through multiple surveys on which brand name they liked the best. Mama's Choice was not in my top 5 brand name choices, but the community chose it, and it had a resounding yes versus any, or a resounding lead over any other brand name. So we went with it. And it was the same thing for the color of Mama's Choice as well. Initially, Mama's Choice was supposed to be green in color because it was to signify the fact that it's natural and to signify the fact that it was a halal certified product. But the community ended up choosing this bright pink for the mama line, and a yellowy orange for the baby line, and we went with that. So it was 100% data driven and 100% community driven decisions. I took myself out of the equation.
What can be a better assurance when your own community says that this is the lineup we want, this is the name we want, and this is the color that we can be drawn towards?
Exactly. So that's why I do believe that listening to the community has allowed us to launch what is the biggest skincare brand for moms and babies in Indonesia. I do not think that we would have been able to become a market leader in such a short period of time if we didn't have the community and if we weren't listening to the community.
Yeah. So tell me something, when you expanded into Indonesia and you said that the first launch of Mama's Choice was in Indonesia.
That's right.
Can you recall any funny or surprising moments that made you think, okay, this is going to be different here?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think at the end of the day, understanding the success in Indonesia requires like having a hyper local approach, right? I think at the end of the day, having a success across any market in Southeast Asia, it's really about having a hyper local approach. But Indonesia more so because of the fact that it has 270 million people who are of many different religions and customs and practices. I think a lot of times people just paint Indonesia as Indonesia, but Surabaya is so different from Jakarta, is so different from Bandung, is so different from IKN or Pontianak. So, every single part of Indonesia has its own culture. And in fact, I was reading that if you want to spend one day in every major like city or township or municipality in Indonesia, you'd have to be traveling for 30 years every single day. And so, Indonesia is big, it's huge, and it's actually a melting pot in itself. Even though as a company, we're headquartered in Singapore company, but because we had operations across so many different markets in Southeast Asia, and even we had operations in India as well, we knew that, our Singapore tested strategies would not automatically work here. And I think going from that moment, with the understanding that we don't know anything and every single country is day one all over again. So I would say that, finding local partners, finding people who actually understand the market as well as you is so important. And that was one of the first few steps that we did.
Okay. So any thoughts that you had in Singapore or any strategy that you implemented in Singapore, you had to tweak it for Indonesia? Like, is there anything that you thought I cannot really reapply this in Indonesia market and it's going to be totally different? Any example on that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot, right? So the first one is just how you work with your team. Because at the end of the day, I think for success for any company or any business, the team is 80% of it, right? And then the 20% of it is the product. But if you don't have a team that can work cohesively and who can execute your vision as a CEO and a founder, then you're doomed right from the beginning. And, an Indonesian team is very, very different from a Singapore team. So for example, in Indonesia, you have to accept the fact that sometimes people live really, really far away. And so you have to be flexible on time. If in Singapore, if a meeting is set for 9 o'clock, it starts at 9 o'clock. Most of the time people are there at 8:55. In Indonesia, it's okay for a person to come in at 9:20, and that's not considered late. So if you shout at someone for being 20 minutes late, then you're considered an unreasonable boss. And that's because, the country it's a large country, right? Even Jakarta in itself, or the whole Jabodetabek area in itself, it can take you, it's not just about the traffic jam, but it's just about the distance in itself. And you have employees who, while you might be having your office in south of Jakarta, and they're living in Bogor. And so it's going to take a bit of time for them to commute. And then of course you've got things like erratic weather and traffic, and everything can go to chaos, right? I remember I was once 3 hours late for a meeting, which was incredible for me because I was like, how is it possible that I can be 3 hours late? And that's because there was a conference going on, one of the G20 type conference things here. And I was stuck right in the middle of a protest zone. And there was nothing I could do. It was not safe for me to get out and catch a Gojek. So I just had to sit in the taxi and while away my time, and my battery went flat. And I remember sitting there having no access to a laptop, no handphone because my charger was out of battery too. And going, oh wow, now I get to just appreciate the landscape of Jakarta.
Yeah, yeah. And when you reach the meeting, knowing Indonesia, they probably wouldn't have created any fuss about it. It's like accepted that, like, okay, you got stuck in traffic, which is fine. It's the way of living here, and it's perfectly fine to walk in late.
Absolutely. I mean, I was 3 hours late, right? And of course they were very gracious about it. In fact, I think they felt really bad because they knew I was a foreigner, and they were laughing and they said, how in the world why did you take this road? Like, did you not read the news that said that there were going to be protests here? I was like, no, of course I didn't read the news.
That's one thing very beautiful about Indonesia. People have a lot of patience, and they appreciate, the empathy level is so high that they appreciate that, okay, if there has been a problem, anyone could have been a part of it. So they're not the ones who would say, oh, you walked in late, and how can we now have a meeting? They're very comfortably seated, and they'll understand, and then they just start off from where it had to.
Yeah, absolutely. So Indonesians are one of the most gracious people I've ever met. And I think one of the things that really stands out in this country is there's no is not always no, and yes is not always yes. So everything operates in a kaleidoscope of grays. And so there. As a Singaporean, that took me quite a bit of time to get used to because I'm so, accustomed to hard blacks and hard whites. But I really started to enjoy and love the nuances of all the grays, right? Where a no is never a no.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's actually very lovely about Indonesia. Because Roshni, so many entrepreneurs struggle when scaling in a market which is as unique, as diverse as Indonesia. And like you said, you had your own journey when you launched here, and your own struggles. But what was that aha moment that made you realize, okay, this is the place which is here for long, or that made things click here for you?
So I would say the first aha moment was not very romantic, right? It was just about looking at sheer demographic data. This country is, one of the top 20 economies as of now, but by 2050, it's expected to be a top 5 world economy. So that was one big aha moment. The second was looking at the number of babies being born every year. In Singapore, we have, about 30-odd thousand babies born every year. In Indonesia, we have close to 5 million born every year. So just the numbers were so drastically different. The GDP per capita was growing immensely. And in many sense, it felt like the early days of what we saw in China. Now, of course, I wasn't old enough, to start a business in China at that point when China was going through its growth journey. But I definitely did not want to miss out the opportunity of being part of the Indonesia success story and the Indonesia growth story. So it's really about looking at it not from a romantic point of view, but from a pure scientific point of view, that this is my next door neighbor and I don't understand it as well. My father was born here. My father-in-law is Indonesian, but left at a very, very young age. So it's a country that is so familiar yet so unfamiliar. And how can that be? And because I have a daughter and I was thinking about her future as well, I felt that it would be an absolute travesty if she did not learn to know Indonesia and identify with the culture of Indonesia as well. So I felt that Indonesia was a country you cannot ignore. And it was very important to truly get to know this country. So that was the first thing, right? The first aha moment was just not even sitting in the country, just looking at demographic data. And then I think when I landed in Indonesia, I realized that, in order to scale here, and I alluded to this before, it's so important to find, local partners and collaborators who truly understand the unique dynamic of the market. And at the same time, for me, it was people who also shared our vision of empowering parents in Southeast Asia. And so, a couple of the things that we did was we tried to look for an Indonesian investors, and we brought in East Ventures into our cap table. And that then gave us access to all the founders because they had invested in so many unicorns and so many companies that were doing successfully in Indonesia. So I suddenly had this network of other CEOs and other founders I could speak to. And then it was about really hiring local as well, because it was so important to build trust at a grassroots level. I think one of the things I see with a lot of Indonesian companies and CEOs or founders or people who want to build businesses in Indonesia, they often go abroad and find in management to come into Indonesia to lead up the business. And I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to make sure that I could really truly have an Indonesian company and hire local talent across the board, from the most senior leaders to the most juniors, and who truly understood the market, and could give me the nuances and insights that I would not have since I wasn't local.
So, like you rightly said, the demographics of the country spoke for itself. So if one is expanding into Southeast Asia, you cannot rule out Indonesia from the map. But it's also a very demanding market, and it's fast-paced in its own ways. So how do you juggle being a mom and then running a fast-paced company in a very demanding country? Any hacks for staying sane?
Yeah, no, so I agree with you, Neha, that, Indonesia, the demographics looks wonderful. And if you look at pictures of Bali and Bogor and Lombok, it looks like heaven on earth, right? But the reality is that it's not the easiest country to live in, right? The people are beautiful, but the infrastructure is not what most of us would expect. You have to deal with, really, really horrible pollution. You have to deal with traffic jams. You have to deal with, water safety, food safety, sometimes just the basics like the healthcare. And so it's not, it's not an easy land per se, especially if you're coming from a very developed country. But the people make up for it here. If you put a gun to my head and said, would I do this all over again? It would be a resounding yes, 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 yes. And again, I'm someone who has the opportunity to pretty much live anywhere in the world. And I choose to live in Jakarta. I choose to live in Indonesia. So, just to set context, right, that it's definitely not easy. And then how do you, stay sane here and juggle being a mom? It's definitely not easy. And I've learned the secret is just accepting that the ball's going to drop. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's dinner plans, sometimes it's me collapsing on my couch. So so my hack is I schedule everything. Even my hide in the bathroom with chocolate time is scheduled. Because for me, it's really important about making sure that while the schedule might go off plan, but if there is a schedule, I know I'm very cognizant of what needs to get done. And then, I delegate a lot. So I think for myself, as a CEO and a founder, it was very, very important. I think the most important life decision I ever could have made was choosing the right man to get married to. And I think I chose really well because my husband is incredible. I would not have been able to accomplish half of what I accomplished without him and without his support. So being able to turn to a partner that I trust and who trusts me and doesn't put extra added expectations on me, it has been just, absolute boon, right? Because oftentimes I actually delegate to him. And I, of course, I also delegate a lot to my team. I have an incredible housekeeper who, without her, I would call her the COO of my household because I have never bought a bottle of milk. I have no idea I have no idea how much bread cost or milk cost. She does all the supermarketing. I always tell her, she used to come to me and she used to say, oh, this is broken, that is broken, we're out of stock of this. And I said, that's not my problem, it's yours. The house is your problem, not mine. So being able to have someone I can truly trust at home to help me run the household so I can actually run my office has been incredible help as well. And I think that's one of the beauty of Southeast Asia, because in Southeast Asia you can actually hire help for the house. And it's about choosing right, and making sure that you bring in somebody who is an additive or a bar raiser into your household or into your company or into your life. And, sometimes I even delegate to my daughter. She's surprisingly good at bossing people around and getting stuff. So that's some strategies for staying sane. And I would say the last and most important thing is to carve out time for myself. Sometimes it's about a 30 minutes Netflix, show, or I love the fact that I live in Indonesia. I can call a woman to my home to do a cream bath for me. This is an incredible Indonesian hair treatment. And it comes along with an extra 20-minute massage. So I would say self-care, right? So self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. And knowing how to laugh at the little things.
Yeah, I mean, so great to hear that, you not only have a very supporting staff, you also have a very hands-on husband. And I think as a team only one can thrive if you've got a great team, even at the personal front. Because uprooting from one country to another with a child, and that too from Singapore to Indonesia, can be very challenging. A simple challenge like finding your kind of people to hang around over the weekends with, for example. Everyone needs the downtime. That itself can be very, very challenging, So to be able to navigate all that and make Indonesia your home, and like you said, that if someone asks you again, would you do it again? And it will be a resounding yes. Kudos to you, Roshni, for that, Roshni, you have worked with women entrepreneurs across Asia through your Female Founders Network. Can you tell us something more about this network?
Oh, sure. Okay, so we have the Female Founders Network, which is just really more of an informal group of about 3,000 founders who are at all stages of starting a business. But the one network I have started and I'm really immensely proud of is called the Women Helping Women Network. So we have an Indonesia chapter as well that's just started, and we have a Singapore chapter. And the purpose of the Women Helping Women Network was a little bit different than female founders. So for female founders, it's for really founders of all stages, right? Or even women who just want to think about starting a company. For Women Helping Women, it's established founders. It's women, and not just founders, but it's women leaders. So they could be, second generation family owners. They could be venture capitalists. They could be partners in law firms, partners in audit firms, judges, ministers. So any woman who is in a specific leadership position and she's looking to create a network of other women who are in similar capacities to her. So these are not women who are trying to get something from each other, right? Because they're all established in their own field. But it's about bringing people who have similar challenges, maybe in the home front or even in the career front, and allowing them to have a like-minded peer that they can discuss things with in a confidential manner and in a safe, supportive zone. It was also really important for me to ensure that women who were at leadership positions were able to speak to other women from different industries, because sometimes it's very easy to pigeonhole yourself into a specific industry and just know everybody from that industry. Like, for example, I know all the women venture capitalists in Southeast Asia. I also pretty much know almost all of the female founders who have raised any form of funding, but these are all generally in the tech world. Now, there's a lot of beauty in women who are running companies where they've never raised a single dollar of venture capitalist money, or a woman who is coming up with public policy documents that are shaping a country. And to be able to learn from them and to be able to hear from them has been, not just a support for me, but I think a support for all the other women who are part of the network as well. So it's a closed door network. We have dinner in each other's homes once every quarter, and once a year, the whole network meets up. So in Singapore, there's about 50 of us. And in Indonesia, we just set this up and there's about 10 of us.
Wow, I mean, this is such a great thing to do. It's also a very supportive group. Like, sometimes you just want to go be a part of it and just hear stories from other women.
Absolutely. And I think the main thing is, a lot of us actually share similar problems. And so we don't need to worry about others judging us. So for example, maybe all of us cannot afford to be at every single parent-teacher conference meetings because unfortunately, teachers like to meet parents during working hours. And, it's just not possible, right? To be able to take every month, once a month, out to actually go and see your teacher in your kid's school. Now, for a lot of Indonesian families, they may outsource this to another family member to go and speak to the teacher, or, like maybe the mother-in-law is not working or the grandmother's not working. So they have access to others who can kind of step in for them. But I think if you are an expat woman, who's working, it becomes really challenging. And especially when you're at the leadership level, you can't afford to just tell your team that, hey, I'm gone for half the day, right? And I need to take care of my kid. Sometimes there are high stake meetings that happen at the same time. So, being able to talk to other women who experience the same experiences as you and have to make the same type of compromises, and hearing what they would do in your situation is refreshing as well as sometimes very eye-opening.
Yeah, and this Women Helping Women network are not only Indonesian women. They are a mix of from all nationalities, the Indonesia chapter.
So the Indonesia chapter is predominantly Indonesian, actually. So we've got, there's actually 11 of us right now in the Indonesia chapter, and only 2 of us are non-Indonesians.
Okay. Is there any advice for the moms who dream of starting something of their own? Like, what will be your number one advice or the number one step that you think one must take?
Oh, I think that's really easy. The number one advice is simple. Just start. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect plan, because perfect plans don't exist. As moms, we're already pros at adapting and figuring things out on the go. And that's the same mindset most women need when starting a business. So begin with something small, test an idea, talk to potential customers, create a basic version of your product or service, get it out to the world, start learning from real feedback. And if you fail, you fail. Who cares? Start again. So that would be my number one advice. And then the second one would be, don't be afraid to ask for help. Building a business, especially as a woman, takes a village, right? Just like raising kids takes a village. So whether it's leaning on your partner, finding a mentor, connecting with other women, entrepreneurs, just having a strong support system can make all the difference, or even listening to this podcast. And of course, finally, trust in yourself. Believe that you do bring a unique perspective and strength to the table. Especially if you are a parent, then you've already mastered time management, creativity, and resilience, and all the critical skills for any entrepreneur. So use that superpower, take that first step, and the rest will follow.
Great. That's such a great advice to all our listeners. If you are thinking to starting something, Roshni says, don't think too much, just start with something small and it will take its own shape. Roshni, what has been your proudest moment so far in Indonesia?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I would say one of my proudest moments in Indonesia was during this recent mom and baby fair in Jakarta. It was called Mommy and Me. And the energy was incredible. Thousands of parents who were exploring our booth, engaging with our products, and connecting with our community, and being able to see them connecting with our products and giving us feedback in real time. I felt like everything we worked for came to life in that moment. And what made it really special, or my proudest moment so far in Indonesia with this event, was having my daughter there with me. So the first thing was that for her to be able to see that these are the products that Mommy's selling, this is the community that mom engages with, was, it was something for me to feel proud of, right? Because it was like, baby, this is what mama has built. And then the second thing was she was actually our mascot. So she wore the Bun Bun costume. Bun Bun is our bunny mascot. And she was dancing around and spreading joy. And it was just such a heartwarming sight to see my daughter as the mascot in this oversized bunny costume. And the team was laughing and working seamlessly together and just genuinely enjoying the event. And it was a beautiful reminder of how my personal family, my work family, and the amazing community we serve can all come together so effortlessly. And just seeing parents walk away with smiles, sharing their stories with us, telling us about what a difference our product has made, how they use our application on a daily basis to raise their baby, and knowing that we're truly making a difference in their lives. It was one of those, this is why I do what I do moments. And it reinforced that this journey just wasn't about building a business. It was about building connections and creating impact and celebrating the joys of parenting.
It must be very, very adorable sight to see your daughter in a oversized bunny costume.
And hopping around that too.
Not very often and not in many professions, you get to get your family also involved. Like, it could just be sometimes it's just pure work and then you're rushing back to your family. This is wonderful to get everyone involved and be a part of it,
Absolutely. It was, and I think it was also great for her to see. First, I'm the first woman in my family that actually has a job or a career. So my mom didn't work, my grandma didn't work, all of my mom's sisters didn't really work. So, I'm the first generation of someone who's working.
So I'm saying it's quite a role model, for your daughter to have you one can have a very busy and a hectic career, yet being able to manage and balance the family life.
Absolutely, Neha. So it was just incredible to be able to have my daughter there with me. But what I think was more important was the fact that my daughter could see what mom's job really meant. For that was very meaningful for me. And also it was all about role modeling. So in my family, I'm the first woman to ever work. My mom didn't work. My grandma didn't work. All of her sisters didn't really work. So, having a woman actually work and that to run a business and be the top leader is something very, very new in my family. And so being able to have my daughter look at me and say, oh, wow, mom's not just working, but this is what mom's job is. And she's actually the leader of all of this. And more importantly, she built this was really important for me because it was about inspiring her that women can do whatever they want. And we should not be held back by anyone's expectations, not our family's expectations or society's expectation of us.
Roshni, very beautifully you summed up and very motivational to all our listeners that you know how to have a very, very active career despite that you've not seen it in your family because none of the ladies worked. And from generations to come in your family would remember this, to build a brand and not a small business. It's across 13 countries, right?
So predominantly physical presence across 7 countries, but yes, we have a virtual presence across 13 countries.
All right. Actually, I was coming to this question, with everything going digital, and I understand your product lineup, your Mama's Choice is also in physical stores.
That's right.
Okay. And which physical store are they present in here in Indonesia?
So in Indonesia, we're in all the mother care outlets and we're in about 300 other baby stores across the island. But in Jakarta, we have a physical kiosk for Mama's Choice in Kota Casablanca Mall.
Okay. Now with digital, Indonesia is a very digitally savvy economy, right? Why did you think that I should also have an offline presence and not just online?
That's a great question. So I would say that, Indonesia is a dynamic and diverse market. And while online shopping is incredibly popular and continues to grow, there's still a strong demand for physical retail, especially in family-centric malls. So if you look at it, and we look at all of the data that looks at e-commerce penetration, in Singapore, e-commerce penetration is about 45 to 50% of the market. In a market like Thailand, it's about 30%. In markets like China, it's even more, right? It's like 60-70% digital. But in some place like Indonesia, it's around 10% digital. So 90% of shopping still happens offline. So if you want to grow in Indonesia, yes, online is really important, but it's very important that you do not ignore the strong demand for physical retail and letting your customers experience and touch and feel your products firsthand. So for us, it's really not about choosing one channel over the other. It's about creating a seamless omni-channel experience. So whether that's through our online platform, physical stores, third-party retailers, or pop-up events, the goal is to really meet parents where they are and provide them with the convenience, trust, and connection that they're looking for.
Okay, so for the startup people like who are just starting off, would you advise that they start like from the beginning? They should have a omni-channel strategy, like have your business presence both online and offline, or would you say start with online first and then pivot to offline as well?
So I would say that the audience online and the audience offline is very different from each other. So it would, so it depends on what kind of company you're and what type of product you're trying to do. If it's a product where, like for example, for us, young moms, young families, the young moms in Indonesia, they're about 24, 25 years old. They're digital natives. So, it made sense for us to be online first. We also knew that most of our buyers were going to be coming from big cities like Jakarta, Surabaya. And so that has slightly higher digital penetration than the whole of Indonesia. So I would say there's no one size fits all decision when it comes to that. But you do have to recognize that going offline adds a lot of complexity to a business. You also, if you're in the e-commerce space or if you're in a digital, physical product space, you have to also understand things like cash flow and, when do people return back your products to you? So it's actually very expensive to go offline. And if you've made a mistake, like a mistake in pricing, you can't just change your price overnight. When it's online, you can test the price, right? It could be $10 today or 100,000 IDR, but tomorrow you could change it to 120,000 IDR and test how was the demand. Whereas when you're offline, you can't do these types of tests because how can you contact every shopkeeper and say, hey, the price has changed. Now it's 120,000. It's not 100,000.
Okay, so in an online world, there are many e-commerce or there are many platforms where one could sell their product. And I'm coming to TikTok, which is predominantly very big in Indonesia. So if I look at TikTok versus Instagram versus now YouTube shopping, because they launched it here in Indonesia first, which channel would you recommend for a DTC brand for our aspiring entrepreneurs?
That's a great question. Okay, so I think it also depends on your vibe, right? So TikTok is where you go viral, showing off how to clean a baby bottle in 15 seconds flat type hack, right? And Instagram is for staging that bottle in this aesthetic flat lay with beautiful eucalyptus leaves and artisanal soaps next to it. And YouTube is where you go to explain the science behind the soap, complete with like slow motion montage, right? So my advice is it's a combination of TikTok for awareness, Instagram for community engagement, and YouTube for deep content that works. And this is what would work for a DTC brand more from a content and community point of view. Now, when it comes to online sales, so TikTok shop versus YouTube shop versus, of course, Instagram doesn't have a shop, right? So versus going to like a Tokopedia or a Shopee or Lazada, I would say that a lot of it would depend on the age group as well. So TikTok still steers younger. And in TikTok, your purchase decision is really about, I see something cool and I kind of like it. So when prices are a little bit more affordable, and these would be non-essential necessities, that's the kind of things that do well in TikTok. Whereas for something like a Shopee, someone would have done a little bit more research. And I'm guessing with YouTube shopping, it would have been extensive research done, and they have decided that they want to buy this product.
Oh wow, very beautifully you kind of divided all the three channels and told our listeners what one stands for and what would be the benefit of what kind of content to be pushed on these channels. Can you also give us 3 ideas or 4 ideas that would suggest for an Indonesian entrepreneur to start, given the landscape of this country and the cultural nuances of this country?
Okay, so wow, if you're already in Indonesia, so you're already culturally familiar with this place, I would say that you should look at The Big Spark. This was the Channel News Asia show where I was a resident judge and mentor. On the show, I came across different startups tackling regional needs here in Southeast Asia, like a platform offering eco-friendly product alternatives, which was perfect for the growing sustainability movement. Early wage access platform addressing financial stress, and a health tech solution that uses AI to track wellness. And these were all very localized. Now, the reason I say it was localized is because if you take the early wage access platform, right? So this is something that's really, really quite a novelty, right? In a developed country, you don't really have these things like early wage access. Whereas if you live here in Indonesia, you would know that, having the ability to get their salary early on time is really important for a lot of people, especially for the middle class and below. And a lot of the population is still what we would consider to be socioeconomic C and D. So these early wage platforms works with the HR of companies to be able to verify that the employee works here and receives this amount of salary every month. And instead of the company having to pay them every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, these early wage access platforms would pay them on a weekly basis and then collect a fee or a commission from the company at the end of the month. So this is a very localized idea that would work in markets like Indonesia or Philippines, which we do not see the need of in countries like Singapore or higher wage income countries. Then, we've also seen health techs. When I mentioned the health tech solution that used AI, it's because in a market like Indonesia, you don't have a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists. So, can you actually offer AI psychologist and psychiatric treatment for all the mental health issues that we're seeing crop up, especially among the Gen Zs? So I would say that, if those were like real like ideas per se, but if you're just strategies you're after, I would say define your value proposition, be crystal clear about the problem you're solving and why it matters. Make sure that you're still doing your homework. Do you want this to be a Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya type business, or do you want to actually have it as a nationwide business? Because what works with Jakarta might not resonate in your smaller cities as well. And of course, as always, whether you're local or you're not local, please build your network early. You need mentors, investors, and fellow entrepreneurs.
That's brilliant advice, Roshni. Do we see you venturing into any of these ideas you talked about?
No, definitely not. I've got my hands full with what I'm doing.
Okay, Roshni, finally, if we fast forward 5 years, what's your big vision for the Parent Inc. in Indonesia? And any exciting plans that you can share?
So what's my big vision for the Parent Inc. in Indonesia? Well, the big vision is for every pregnant woman and new parent in Indonesia to use our products, have the Asian Parent app installed on their phone, and feel truly supported through our parenting journey together because of us and with us. We're also launching a whole new slew of brands and products that are tailored to the unique needs of Indonesian families, but I can't reveal too much about that yet. But what I can share is that these innovations will stay true to our mission of providing healthy, high quality, affordable, and trusted solutions to parents to make their parenting life easier and more enjoyable.
Thank you so much, Roshni. It's been a very, very exciting, engaging, and above all, this very inspirational session. I'm sure not only me, our listeners also. I mean, I'm pumped up with starting something because, like you said, don't overthink this. You have an idea, just start.
Well, you have with this podcast. So congratulations as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roshni. To all our listeners, secret thing, whenever I feel little lower energy, my go-to person is Roshni.
Thank you, Neha. That's very sweet of you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Durian Dreaming. I hope today's discussion sparked some new ideas for you. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay tuned for more exciting stories. Until next time, keep dreaming big.